Hello, folks. Happy Valentine's Day. Welcome back to another episode of Flop Warning Women's Wednesday edition. I'm Luke Donovan. Alongside me today, Zion Brown, Riley Woodall. Let's go to the monitor and look at some intriguing games from this weekend. Starting off, Riley, do you want to talk about the Iowa-Nebraska game? Huge upset come from behind win.
Yeah, so number 2 Iowa goes on the road to Nebraska in a rivalry game, unranked Nebraska, by the way. And Nebraska ends up pulling one out of the hat on the Hawkeyes, 82-79. And mind you, Iowa led for the entire game until the last 30 seconds of the fourth quarter. And it was the 3-ball from Jazz Shelley that gave the lead for the Cornhuskers, 78-77, which real quickly before I keep talking about this game, her name is Jazz. That is so sick. That is awesome. I would kill to have a name like Jazz. That is awesome. But Jazz finished with 23 points, which is her career high. Iowa led by 14 going into the fourth quarter. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but the Cornhuskers ended up switching their defense to a box and one, diamond and one. We'll break that down a little bit later in the show. But great win for the Cornhuskers in front of a record-setting crowd in Pinnacle Bank Arena, 15,000 plus in there for the Cornhuskers. It was just Nebraska's 4th ranked victory over a top 5 opponent, not this season, but in school history. In school history. And it's redemption for the Cornhuskers after they lost to Iowa earlier this season at home. Each team hit 10 threes. And here's the thing for me. Here was what did it. This is like the stat that stood out to me the most. Nebraska out-rebounded Iowa 45-38, 14-8 on the offensive glass. And for a team that really hit some clutch threes in the late stages, those offensive rebounds were the difference maker. 16 turnovers also for the Hawkeyes in that game.
Yeah, that was a win that really got Nebraska on the right side of the NCAA tournament outlook. They might have already been kind of closer to that, being in and out, but you beat one of the best teams in the country. You're in good shape now going forward if they don't kind of collapse here towards the end of the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, certainly anytime you can beat Caitlin Clark, you love that. Great Big Ten Conference win. Gives them some momentum with about a month left in the regular season. If they can ride this wave out, get some good wins, maybe improve their seeding, and then if you get a little higher up in the seeding, the games get a little bit easier in March Madness.
And I think the Buckeyes are quaking in their boots because they have to play this Cornhusker team next. Obviously, Ohio State will host Nebraska, but I don't know. If I'm the Buckeyes and I see the Cornhuskers beat Iowa like that, just like the Buckeyes beat Iowa as well, that's going to be an interesting game. That's going to be a really fun game to watch.
Ohio State moved up to the 1 line, and Iowa fell to the 2 line after this loss. So, yeah, certainly Nebraska looking to get another top-tier win against them.
Yeah, so for my game of the week, it's one of those games that has become more of a rivalry, a non-con rivalry, but it's a blowout. South Carolina 83-65 over UConn, and this was without Camila Cardoso, who was playing on the Brazilian national team for some Olympic qualifiers. So, South Carolina without their starting center still look like the same team we see without, as we've seen all season long, and a whole new starting 5 out there for the Gamecocks, and it just has not mattered this year. Then you lose your starting center, probably your best player, even if she's not your best scorer. It still doesn't matter. You still beat UConn by 18. Obviously, the Huskies have gone through a lot of injuries throughout the year, but still a very talented team and a hard team to just destroy like that. But they did that, and Tahina Paopao led the way with 21 points. You had 4 players in the starting 5 for South Carolina reach double figures, and they held that UConn offense to 37% field goal percentage from the field. Even though Paige Becker still got her 20 points, same with Aaliyah Edwards, it didn't matter. They couldn't really score outside of those 2 women, and this South Carolina team is just so freaking good. Once again, we said it last year, so who knows? You never say never. Iowa beat them last year, but it's hard for me to look at them the way they just roll through everybody and say, I can really trust the team to beat them come tournament time because, man, they are good.
And it obviously they've been dominant in previous seasons, but I think this is the first time in a long time where there's a team that's just been so dominant that it's the question of who can actually stop them. And there's very few teams on that list this season, if any teams at all, that can beat South Carolina. I mean, maybe the Hawkeyes this year, but I don't know. You lose Monica Sanano after last year for the Hawkeyes. Maybe Ohio State with the press that could cause the Gamecocks some trouble. But yeah, the list is very small for teams that are going to beat the Gamecocks this year.
Yeah, I mean, they're incredible. You have to, the only way a team is going to beat them is if they're a little bit cold. If they play an A tier game from their own standpoint, they're not losing. So you need them on a bad day. You have to be on your best day, and you need somebody to be a difference maker like a Caitlin Clark with the Hawkeyes, who could be one of the few people that can actually probably beat this team. That's about it. And then looking at the next game we got here, Oregon State versus Colorado. Oregon State has been very hot. They're number 17. Colorado was number 4. Oregon State has beaten Utah twice and Colorado twice in their last 5 games. 4 great wins, and this one was another one. They were up 20 at halftime against number 4 ranked Colorado. Just a phenomenal performance. Their leading scorer was Talia Van Offen, who normally leads the team in assists, but this time 18 points, 3 for 4 from the perimeter, and their normal leading scorer added 12 points and 12 rebounds, Reagan Beers. Phenomenal game from Oregon State. They're playing really good basketball at the moment.
Yeah, and especially when it's a tough team like Colorado, who Colorado's really good. Colorado's really, really good this year, but they're also playing at Colorado. They were at the Buffs, and Oregon State still was able to pull that one out. We've got a lot of road-ranked upsets and home-ranked upsets in February. We're supposed to get those in March, but we're getting a little preview of March and February. That's what's up.
Yeah, I'm really just excited to see how these last few weeks of Pac-12 action shake out. Obviously, the last year of the conference a little bit somber in the same way we saw during the football season. But you got Stanford right now at the top of the standings at 11-2. Colorado still 10-3, but Oregon State right on their tails at 9-3. Then, there's still a small chance, but a chance for UCLA and USC both at 8-4 to maybe make that jump as well. I mean, this conference, the last few weeks of it, everybody's still going to have to play each other. It's going to be really fun to see who comes out on top in this loaded conference.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be up there with one of the best conferences. It's sad to see that this conference won't be the case. And Oregon State, typically known for their defense, nearly shot 50% from 3 in this win. So if they are doing this consistently, which probably not going to happen, but if you're a team that can shoot 50% from 3 and your strength is defense, not a lot of teams are going to want to play you.
Real quickly on side tangent, you mentioned something about it's sad to see the conference go. It feels like the Pac-12 is just the most exciting conference ever in dang near every single sport. And of course, it's the last year that we're actually going to have an actual Pac-12. So a good curtain call, but it's just unfortunate. It's just really sad.
All right, moving on now to personally my favorite segment. We got the flop of the week here.
Half of our show name.
Ties in so well. Zion, what you got for your flop of the week?
I'm going to go back to Iowa and specifically the fourth quarter they had. I mean, this is the offense we always talk about being the best and most electric in the country, and to have a 10-point fourth quarter. I know it's a tough road environment. You mentioned it, Pinnacle Bank, highest selling crowd, yada, yada, yada. 10 points, guys. I mean, that is a terrible.
And you have Caitlin Clark on the floor.
Yeah. I mean, and scored 10 points in the fourth quarter to just kind of get annihilated. And like you said, Riley, the box and one, the diamond and one, they're definitely difficult to adjust against on the fly, but they're not new concepts. It's not the first time anybody's ever run those defenses.
Right.
And the fact that the Hawkeyes and Lisa Bluter and, just everybody, the players on the floor, the coaches, I think the blame is shared. The fact that they couldn't figure that out to score more than 10 points and just completely fall apart in the fourth quarter, that's got to be my flop of the week. And that's not to say I'm concerned about this team going forward. I still think they're a top 5 or 6 team in the country, but they were certainly my flop of the week just because of how poorly they played in a tense moment.
Yeah, and I think I think other coaches, I think it's safe to say that other coaches that are going to play this Hawkeyes team the rest of the regular season and then do tournament time will probably end up running some kind of hybrid and switching around to a box and one, diamond and one with how poorly the Hawkeyes handled it against Nebraska. Again, you're on the road, but Nebraska's an unranked team. They're an unranked Big Ten team, and they're really still searching. They were still searching for a big win because they were still kind of having a down year. So I don't know. It's just going to be interesting to see the Hawkeyes play the rest of their season and see how many teams come out in that defense or like switch to it at times to give them trouble. My flop of the week. Okay. All right. Look, I saw this and it genuinely frustrated me. I'm already flustered just talking about it. It was so upsetting to me. Number 3, NC State losing by 11 points at home to number 16, Virginia Tech. This was Virginia Tech's second win over NC State this season. So they sweep NC State in the regular season. They outscored NC State in every single quarter. They hit 11 threes, and this is the part that really frustrated me for NC State. VT out-rebounded NC State 48-31, 15-5 on the offensive end. 15-5, gentlemen. No duh, you're going to lose. You're going to give extra chance opportunities for your offense. You're going to let the offense get more opportunities to hit threes, and that's exactly what happened. When you're getting out-rebounded by a -10 margin, a +10 margin, if you're Virginia Tech, you're going to lose 10 times out of 10. Like, it's just a fact. I don't care if you're the number 3 ranked team in the country. I don't care. And you're at home. You're at home and you get out rebounded by a +10 margin. I just don't. I got to calm down. 18-4 on the assist side of things. Virginia Tech had 18 assists, dang near 20 assists. So now VT has road games at Louisville, Notre Dame, and Virginia. If I'm them, I'm absolutely horrified. I am absolutely horrified about that. You got 2 of them that are ranked teams, Louisville and Notre Dame. But if they just did that to the number 3 ranked team in the country, they're now number 6, but they were number 3, I'm quaking in my boots. I'm looking at what this team did, and this is a really great team. I'm scared. I'm genuinely scared. Virginia Tech's got a great outlook the rest of the season.
Yeah, it puts them in a great spot to win the ACC regular season title because now they're up to 11-2. NC State falls to 9-3. You have Syracuse in the mix there at 10-3, but you're a game ahead now for Virginia Tech, and that's a big win. On the road, they beat them twice this year. Great stuff from the Hokies. They got to keep it rolling. Can't wait to see them play in March. Moving on now, flip the script from flop of the week to fab of the week, where we get to the good stuff, the highlight moments. Zion, what do you got for us?
So I know she lost on Sunday. And I understand that, it's like, well, they lost and she was just okay in that game. And I just literally just went off on her team for what they did in the fourth quarter. But I'm sorry. Hannah Stokey scoring 47 points against Penn State. I felt like we had to mention that somewhere here. And it would have been so much easier to do it if they had just beat Nebraska.
Right.
But 47 points is 47 points. That's hard to do. We don't see that every day. And to go off in that game the way she did, that is one of the, if you guys haven't seen that, I know you guys probably have, but I'm just to our listeners, if you haven't seen that box score on Thursday between Iowa and Penn State, it's one of the craziest box scores I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Caitlin Clark had 15 assists and 12 turnovers. Hannah Stokey had 47 points. It's a 111-93 game in regulation, no overtime or anything. It is one of the most ridiculous box scores ever. And Hannah Stokey only had 15 and 6 against Nebraska, but I had to make her my fab of the week because a 47-point performance. We just talked about Juju Watkins last week on this episode when she had 51. It's only 4 points away. So I feel like I still had to give my props and give my shout out to what Hannah Stokey did in the win over Penn State.
I will say I do need to apologize. I want to take this moment to give you my sincerest apologies because a week ago on this show when I hosted the Women's Wednesday edition, I said that a game to look out for was Iowa-Penn State because Penn State had kind of been playing pretty decently well. They were at Iowa, but they were a pretty dangerous team. They played Indiana close at home. And then they lost 111-93. So I was wrong, but it's okay. That's the life of sports media, guys. Anyway, my fab of the week, I'll flip it around to, it's not a player, not a team, but it's a game. Michigan State at number 14, Indiana. I would argue it's one of the best women's basketball games we've seen this year. At least for me, I've seen this year. This game had everything. It had drama, back and forth action. It was a tug of war. There was fire. There was passion. The crowd was up. The crowd was down. Michigan State fans and IU fans could not catch their breath. They were on the edge of their seats that entire game. So IU led 12-10 with about 7 minutes to go in the first quarter. They did not lead again until 6 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter, where they took the lead 77-76. And you gentlemen can guess who hit the shot to take the lead. It was Sarah Scalia for 3. No surprise there. Some takeaways that I have from this game, other than it just being absolutely incredible. Yarden Garzone is stone cold. I know she's had her ups and downs this season. I know that she's struggled. I know she's had some turnovers. I know she's had some mental mistakes, some fouls. But when it comes to the clutch moments, the sophomore is clutch. Like there's no doubt about it. And she's been clutch for this team ever since she started last year as a freshman. Both teams as well can shoot the three. My goodness, 22 total made threes between the two of them. That's just dirty. That's just dirty. I think it's also really good for Indiana because up until that point, other than maybe Penn State, they hadn't really been pushed at home like that. They still remain undefeated at home after their win over Purdue on Sunday, but they hadn't really been pushed to the breaking point. And for a place that's a safe haven for them at home, I think it was really good for them to just kind of play a team like that they might see again in the Big Ten tournament or the NCAA tournament. For Michigan State, 5 players in double figures, they're a dangerous team, and they're going to be really tough to beat come tournament time. They play tough, they play physical, they're aggressive on defense and offense, and they can score in bunches and score a lot. So I think both these teams are in a really good spot. I was good with this game going really either way, even as an Indiana student. But yeah, just a phenomenal game that I don't think we're going to see quite a lot more of until March.
Gotta give a lot of credit to both those teams. 66% from 3 for Michigan State. Unreal. 50% for Indiana is alone by itself extreme. Great win for Indiana to play and beat a team that was playing very good at home, getting the dub. And now, next segment, mid-major time. Zion, you got the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders. What's to know about them?
I sure do. This team is well on its way to winning Conference USA. Again, they have won 9 straight all-in CUSA play, so they're now 9-0 in the conference, and they just beat Florida International, FIU, by 19 on Saturday to sweep FIU, who is the second team in the conference. Those are the only 2 games FIU has lost in CUSA. So this team is well on its way to another regular season championship in Conference USA, and they're going to be a team that I think should make the tournament again. Now, if they lose in the CUSA tournament, it gets dicey. You know, they don't have a lot of great wins right now when you look at their schedule. However, right now, you look at this team, they are rolling, and I just felt like they deserve some credit for what they've done. I mean, Rick Insell, as the head coach there, has done an amazing job, and they're looking for a chance to go to back-to-back NCAA tournaments.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. To win 9 straight in conference alone is tough, even if it is, maybe the conference is a little bit light in terms of competition. It's still hard to do because it is your conference opponents. So for Middle Tennessee, that's incredible. That's great work by them, and definitely interesting to see how they do when the tournament comes around for the conference. I've got the St. Joseph's Hawks in the Atlantic 10. They're 22-2 overall, 11-1 in conference. Here's the thing that stuck out to me. They are 12-0, a perfect 12-0 on the road, and they've won 9 straight. I don't care what conference you're in. I don't care if you're in some random conference in Alaska, if they have conferences in Alaska. I don't care. To go undefeated on the road is so tough to do. There's really no other ifs, ands, or buts about it. To go 12-0 on the road to remain undefeated is so tough. They've won all but 4 of their games by 11 points or more. They've got 4 players that are shooting above 33% from 3. Laura Ziegler averages a double-double a game. They've got 4 players that average double figures a game. And they're coming off a 12-point win over George Mason. They were ranked last year. They were ranked 6th in their conference tournament. They lost in the second round of that one, and then they lost in the first round of the NIT. They were ranked last year. Even though the conference is a little bit light in terms of competition, I still think I would argue that they should be ranked this year. And keep an eye on the St. Joseph Hawks.
I got Florida Gulf Coast as my sleeper team. They're undefeated in the ASUN conference, but they actually have some good games that they've played.
Yeah.
Their resume, very solid. I was very impressed. They beat UNC earlier. They beat Kentucky, who's another good win. They have not lost in quad 2, quad 3, or quad 4 games.
Wow.
They have a quad 1 win. They are phenomenal for me. They're 4 losses. Iowa, who's one of the best teams in the nation. USC, who's probably close to what Iowa is. Then they have Duke, who's projected to make the tournament right now as like an 8 seed. Not the best loss, but certainly a quality team the Blue Devils are. And then Old Dominion, another good team, probably just outside of the tournament right now. All in quad one. They have two players, a nice little duo, guard and forward. Amani Jefferson, she comes in averaging 17 points a game. And then their forward, Azudu, she's got 13 points and 8 boards. I love the duo. I love the team. I love the schedule. They have some good wins. The 5 games they have left on their schedule, they should handle all of them. Only one of those teams has a record above 500. So I think they're going to cruise through their conference. I think they'll win their conference tournament. And then I want to see what they can do against some of these, Power 5 conference teams. They already have wins over UNC and Kentucky. So I think they're a team that could make some upsets.
FGCU is a really good program at this point. They're probably about to make their 4th straight tournament, and they could get to a point where they win 30 games or more for the 3rd season in a row. And what Carl Spesco has done with this program continually is just incredible. And they're doing it once again, like you mentioned. They run the ASUD. Everything in that conference pretty much runs through them. And I wouldn't be surprised to see this team, make the tournament again and win a game or two, as they have. They've made it to the second round the last 2 years. So maybe this is the year they even make the Sweet 16 and upset 2 teams to get to the Sweet 16 on the second weekend of the tournament.
Run the table, FGCU.
All right. Well, that was enough recapping what has happened so far in women's basketball. We got to look ahead to what is exciting this week. Riley, I want to start with you. You got a nice game, NC State coming off the loss and their matchup.
Yeah, so I've got number 6 NC State at Notre Dame. And both these teams are coming off road wins after tough losses. Notre Dame won against Florida State in overtime. That was a great game, by the way. NC State with a win, 83-47 over Pitt. The best wins for NC State this season, Colorado and Louisville. Louisville also beat Notre Dame 73-66, and NC State beat Louisville by 10. The best wins for Notre Dame, UConn 82-67. That was at UConn, but they are 1-4 against ranked opponents this year. 3 of those losses have come on the road or at a neutral site. And NC State 3rd in the Atlantic Conference, Notre Dame 5th. The Atlantic Coast Conference, and Notre Dame 5th in the Atlantic Coast Conference. So this is going to be an interesting game, I think, with conference implications for sure. I think it's going to be a proving ground game for NC State and Notre Dame after those ranked losses that they suffered. This is a stepping stone, I think, for NC State. And I dogged on them a lot earlier. I went on a little bit of a tangent, a little bit of a rant because I was frustrated. But I genuinely think that NC State is a really phenomenal team. They're ranked 6th right now. And this is a big win for them. Notre Dame, the same way. They need to secure some kind of something going on right now because the record against ranked opponents this season is not great. And especially when you're trying to bump up that resume for the NCAA tournament, the Irish need this one. And NC State, if they want to remain one of the top programs in the country, at least ranking-wise, they need this one as well. So conference implications for the ACC. And yeah, it's going to be a good one tomorrow, actually, on Thursday.
I'm going to stay in the ACC. And a small tangent here. My game is Virginia Tech at Louisville. Before I go on the tangent, small tangent here. It feels like every single conference is like kind of just undecided right now. Outside of the SEC, we already talked about South Carolina today. I doubt anybody's going to catch them there. But all the other, 4 or 5 major conferences are still, there's still a lot to be decided. So your game has large implications, that NC State Notre Dame game. And then on Sunday at 2 p.m., number 12 VT going to Louisville. You talked about that VT NC State game, but the Hokies have won 7 straight, and Elizabeth Kitley and Georgia Moore are doing it again, kind of just ramping up at the right time. I mean, I feel like when we talk about that Final Four we saw last year, everybody always talks about LSU, Iowa, and South Carolina. It almost feels like people forget that Virginia Tech was in that Final Four and controlled most of the game against LSU before kind of falling apart late in the fourth quarter. This team is a team that was, maybe a tip or two away, or a shot going in or out away from winning the national championship last year. And I know it's not the exact same team under Kenny Brooks, but they do still have those 2 players I mentioned, Kitley and Moore, and I'll talk about Kitley more later on. So I want to see if they can keep their streak rolling. I talked about the ACC standings right now. VT does sit at the top at 11-2, but you've got, 4 or 5 teams all the way down to Duke, who's right now tied for 5th with Notre Dame, that still have a chance that you could feel like can beat anybody on any given night. So I'm excited for this game. This Louisville team has been kind of up and down as of late, but I just want to see if Virginia Tech can kind of keep it rolling this week. They have another game too before this game. But if VT ends this week with 2 more wins, is on a 9-game win streak, I may be ready to say this team is ready to make another deep push in the NCAA tournament.
And how about Louisville coming off that loss to Syracuse, the questionable call at the end of the game, 73-72 was their last game, that one. And Virginia Tech, they're rolling right now. My game, let's go back out to the Pac-12. The curtain call, as Woodall said earlier, it's Colorado, Utah. And Colorado, frankly, their schedule is unreal. I mean, they just lost to Oregon State, who's ranked. They got Utah on Friday at 8 p.m. And then their next game is USC on the road. And then again, they're going at UCLA.
Jeez,
just a brutal schedule for Colorado. 4 straight ranked matchups, 3 of them on the road. This Utah game, I am very excited to see what these teams can do. Aaronette Vonleh, the center for the Buffs, she has played great along with Jalen Sherrod, who had 34, I believe, or 29. She played great in their previous win against Utah. They won that game back in last year, just at the end of last year, late December game. So now we'll see if Utah can return serve and win the game at home here. But just looking at the Buffs schedule, Utah, USC, UCLA, a lot is going to be figured out in the Pac-12 in those 3 games alone.
Yeah, and especially if, Colorado started out this season like on fire. They upset LSU, they were doing so many incredible things. And the only thing that I get concerned about when teams start out really, really hot and they're doing a phenomenal job at the beginning stages of the season is when are they going to cool off? Or are they going to cool off at the wrong time? And this is a proving game for Colorado, I think, to prove that, you suffer a loss, you're able to get back up on the horse and get a conference win on the road in a hostile environment against a really good Utah team, because you don't want to be cooling off towards the tail end of your conference schedule into the conference tournament for sure.
Yeah, I mean, for looking at Utah a little bit more, Elisa Pili, for them, their leading scorer, she's shooting nearly 60% from the floor, averaging 22 a game.
Can kind of dominate from any point of the floor, has some good vision too as a passer. She's a fun watch.
40% from 3 is wow.
3-level score. She really fuels that team. Utah 13th ranked in scoring. Colorado comes in at 30th, but Utah, they gotta keep improving their resume. They did lose 2 of their last 5 to Oregon State. They do have some good wins over USC and UCLA, and they have a tough schedule coming up as well, just like the Buffs. They just flip UCLA and USC. So we're gonna see the Pac-12. All of the top teams are playing each other in the near future. I'm locked in on the Pac-12.
Zion, you mentioned earlier that a lot of the conferences were undecided, but I think in the next few games, I think everybody will have an answer. Yeah, exactly.
I think everywhere but the Big Ten. The Big Ten is still really because you look at like the AC and the Pac-12, those are like 4 or 5, even 6 team races, whereas the Big Ten right now is still only a 3-team race. So much will be decided, when IU plays Iowa again and like that, but when Ohio State goes to Iowa. Those are really the 2 main games we're looking towards in that conference. But like you said, eventually somebody's gonna have to start separating from these other teams in all these conferences,
because otherwise they're not gonna know what to do.
And we might end up with a situation where we look at 3 different conferences that have co-champions at the end of the season. That is very likely.
Very true.
That Ohio State Iowa game, that's the regular season finale. So that answer, it's going to, I think that game probably will have some implication on if Ohio State stays ahead of the conference, or if Iowa or Indiana can, at least tie or get up there with them.
Real quick side tangent too. I know it's been a show of side tangents, but the fact that Indiana doesn't get to play Ohio State here, or rather at Assembly Hall. We are filming at Indiana University, so that's why I say here. If you're not listening from Indiana. Anyway, the fact that the Hoosiers don't get to play the Buckeyes here, I think really hurts them, and I honestly think that's a problem with scheduling. I know it's tough to do. I know there's so many teams, and it's, I don't envy the person that has to put together the schedules and stuff like that, but at the same time, especially if it's going to come down to like conference implications and who wins the regular season title and things like that. I don't think it's totally fair to judge a team simply because they do one away game and not get a chance to redeem that game at home.
Here's the thing. Here's how I see that situation. I'm not a genius by any means, by any stretch,
Come on, Zion.
by any
Yes,
stretch
you
of the
are.
imagination. But coming into this year, I think most people that follow Big Ten basketball knew the top three was going to be some order of Ohio State, Iowa, and Indiana.
Yeah.
So what sense did it make for the conference to say, Ohio State and IU, you're only going to play each other once? All three of those teams should be playing each other twice.
Yep.
Get to settle the score, and then you say if everybody ties with each other, 1-1 in those series, and it comes down to who does the best against all the other teams. But I feel like everybody knew. I feel like there were maybe a few people that thought Maryland would be better than they are, but I think almost everybody expected this to be the top three in the Big Ten. And it just should have been a situation where everybody played each other twice out of those three schools.
I agree.
I 100% agree. Home and aways for the top three. One, those are the best games everybody wants to see anyways. Two, if you look at their overall records, they are 21-3, 22-3, and 20-3. So there's no wiggle room for those three teams in the Big Ten. All right, moving on now. Player-specific segment. You guys got your game balls. Player of the weeks. Who you guys got? I know, Zion, you're going to start here with Indiana.
All right, I'll get my first one here, and it is Indiana's very own Mackenzie Holmes. Just incredible. The 28 points against Michigan State. It's just, once again, just a seamless 28 points. She's so efficient. She doesn't have to shoot the ball 20 times to get to 28. And then 17 against Purdue. Nothing special, but as many know, that 17 points got her just enough to break the record for the most in the history of IU women's basketball, breaking Tyra Buss's record, who played here at IU from 2014 to 2018. And I know a lot of people say, oh, she's a fifth-year senior. She played more games. I believe I checked. She's only played 3 more games than Tyra Buss. And Tyra Buss played a lot.
Yeah.
Like it was a sizable amount, lot more minutes than Mackenzie Holmes has played. Some of that is just the teams Tyra Buss played on just didn't have the same amount of talent and depth than the teams that Mackenzie Holmes has played on. I mean, I'm looking at Tyra Buss. She averaged 40 minutes a game her senior season.
You're right. There you
which
go.
means like she barely, if ever, sat out. I think maybe, you factor in overtime there, and she probably sat out a couple minutes a game, but averaging 40 minutes a game. Shout out to her. That's insane endurance. But for Mackenzie Holmes to break that record, to do it in Assembly Hall against Purdue was really special. And she ended her career, well, maybe, potentially, they could play in the Big Ten tournament. But as of right now, it appears that she is going to end her career having never lost to Purdue, which anytime you can say that, and you've been here for 5 years, you've never lost to your biggest rival, that's impressive.
Yeah, and Indiana's won 11 straight now versus the Boilermakers in terms of women's basketball. I'll jump in and throw my first game ball out there too, because it's the same as Zion's. It's Mackenzie Holmes, and I mean, there's really no way that you could not give a game ball to Mackenzie Holmes. Zion, the man to my right, actually had the call on Big Ten Plus, an amazing call, by the way.
Appreciate it.
I got the chance to do so as well, along with Ian Plaskoff and Austin Render, of course, who does the radio for the team. And man, you want to talk about an explosion. There was a moment in Assembly Hall where she had a wide open layup and she missed it. And you could just hear the crowd go, no, because to be honest with you, Purdue was trying their dangest hardest.
Oh, they knew. Everybody
knew
what was happening.
Absolutely, they did. And they were trying so hard to not let Mackenzie Holmes break the record. And they did a great job. Like you mentioned, Zion, she just barely got over that hump of 17
Because it would have been, let's just say, with all due respect to the Wisconsin Badgers, who Indiana plays tonight.
Oh, gosh, no.
It would have been so lame for her to do it against Wisconsin today.
Absolutely,
I mean, they're just not a great team. It is likely going to be a blowout. And if she would have done it at Wisconsin tonight and had to kind of wait for that embrace, it just would not have had that same effect and feeling as when she did it in Assembly Hall. Continue.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, too, if you looked at her after the game, just sitting on the bench, because they made a whole congratulatory video for her as well, and they played that on the big screen that was in Assembly Hall, and she just started bawling. And I think I think sometimes we can get caught up in, the stats and like the games and everything like that. But a lot of these people, like, they have so many stories and they're just like us. They're just like human beings. And I think it needs to be said that did not come easily. That's years and years and even decades potentially of work that we don't get to see, that she's putting in the practice room, that she's putting in extra time at her house. And on top of that, not just an amazing victory for her, but she's inspiring so many little girls that are watching her play, and women all across the country watching her play, giving them that dream and that passion that she had. And we need to stop and take these things in sometimes, because you don't really know when you're going to get something like it ever again. And just not take it for granted. So yeah, Mackenzie Holmes gets a game ball from Zion and I. Zion, your other one. Go ahead.
So my other one, I mentioned her just a moment ago. It's Elizabeth Kitley of Virginia Tech. We talk about great post players, and I think probably you think about the whole country. There's about 4, I would say, that are a class above the rest, and I would say that's Kitley, Holmes, Cameron Brink, and Angel Reese. Whatever order you want to put those 4 in, I think those are the best post players. And Elizabeth Kitley probably had the best week of any of them. She went to NC State and put up 25 and 13, and then followed that up with 24 points and 15 boards against Boston College. I mean, if she continues to play this way, if Georgia Moore hits her jump shots from the outside, this team is just so threatening, because there's not a lot of teams that have 2 players that put that much fear into opponents like Virginia Tech does. So I gave my game ball this week to Liz Kitley, because she's just rolling once again, and I would not want to play this team at all right now.
Absolutely not. They are on fire. My second game ball is a little bit more unconventional. I guess you could say it's not a player, but it's Nebraska's defense, and specifically their defense in the fourth quarter. They forced 16 Iowa turnovers. They had 8 steals. They switched up their defense in the fourth quarter to, as we mentioned earlier in the show, a box and one, diamond and one, and it just gave the Hawkeyes so much trouble. And Lisa Bluter and Caitlin Clark said in the post-game press conferences afterwards, it's like, we really shouldn't have struggled that much. Lisa Bluter was really shocked that her team actually struggled that much against that type of defense. And Clark also said in the post-game press conference that, they had practiced against that defense a couple times early in the season, but they certainly weren't totally prepared for them to bust that out. And I think that just caught them up in a moment. It was a heck of a switch up by the Nebraska coaching staff. And Zion mentioned it earlier, but just kind of fallen flat in a really intense moment and clutch moment, and you give up a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter. You got to give credit to Nebraska's defense, because that is what led to them winning that game. Because if they had stuck with that same defense, Iowa wins by 15 points. So Nebraska's defense gets my other game ball of the week.
I got to do a game ball just because what Juju Watkins did with the USC Trojans against the state of Arizona last week, disrespectful. 32 points against the Wildcats, 31 points against the Sun Devils, had 4 blocks against Arizona, 7 rebounds in both games, was getting it done with the assist as well. She was just phenomenal. I'm sure the state of Arizona.
There's no way she's a freshman, man.
No, man. She's doing that as a freshman.
You watch her play out there, you're like, there's no way she's the youngest or one of the youngest players on the court. And I can't even imagine what's going to happen 3 years from now when she is still out there in 2027. I mean, the sky is the limit for Juju. She's insane.
While I'm here pursuing a sports media career, she is, I believe, 2 years younger than me and doing that on a basketball court. That just put that in perspective. It's just like, thanks for that one. You're killing it, man. She's going to be such a special player, and she might honestly be. She'll definitely be one of the top ones that we're talking about in the future, but she could definitely be up there and make her name to be one of the all-time greats to ever play the sport.
All right, we got to get to our last segment here. The shot clock. Riley, I am going to start with you because you have hyped up this shot clock ready.
Owen's getting our clock ready.
Owen is getting the shot clock ready.
Give me a countdown.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, so I got to talk about Lisa Bluter in the Nebraska press conference, all right? And I was thinking about everything that happened, and Lisa Bluter was frustrated that Iowa didn't get to go first so they could go and catch their plane. And traditionally, the away team gets to go first in the game. And I'm going to stick with the Iowa Hawkeyes on this one. I feel like even though it's a big win for Nebraska, I know you're excited. I know the emotion of the moment. You just upset the number 2 team in the country. But you really have to dial it back and let Iowa go first, just so they can catch their plane and get back. I know it's only a state away, but, man, you got to quit giving hate to Lisa Bluter. She had to do her press conference in the hallway.
Shot clock.
Barely 3 seconds over.
The shot hung in the air for 3 seconds.
Yeah, just to comment on that. That was just such a weird situation.
It was so weird.
Like,
At the buzzer.
it's just like don't yell while other players are in there.
Yeah, I didn't even mention that, but don't.
The press
Yeah, you
just
can't.
don't do that.
Yeah, even if you're frustrated, don't interrupt.
All right, am I next here?
Yeah,
here we
you
go.
All right,
are
all right.
next.
I need my countdown.
3, 2, 1, go.
I'm so tired of the hoorah and the just constant bickering over the celebrations we see in women's sports. This is the Nebraska game again. Josh Shelley hit the "you can't see me," the same thing we saw last year with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. It's just like, okay, guys, people celebrate. It's okay. Why is this a big deal? Why do people feel they need to argue about it every single time it happens? Just stop. Let them celebrate. Let everybody have fun. It's sports. It's games. It's supposed to be fun. Let's just chill out.
Oh, got the shot
Got
off.
it barely. I love celebrating. There's nothing wrong with celebrating.
Have some fun.
Well,
We're playing
especially-
basketball.
Especially if you're not being malicious about
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're not saying anything demeaning. You're not doing like vulgar gestures or anything.
Celebrate,
like that. Like,
not-
celebrate.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
All right, here we go.
I'll count you in, Luke. Actually, Zion, you count him in.
I got him. 3, 2, 1.
I just want to talk about Syracuse and Deja Fair. They balled out. They beat Louisville by 1 on a questionable call at the end of the game. She hit 2 free throws when they were down 1. She is 6th all time in college basketball for women scoring wise. 70 points behind Brittany Griner. She's going to pass her.
Jeez.
Everybody's talking about Caitlin Clark. We got to give some respect to Deja Fair. Syracuse projected 5 seed. She had 17 in their win against Georgia Tech. I love her. I love Syracuse. Boom.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree.
You're right
This
on
team,
it. Yep.
this Syracuse team, which is right up there in those ACC standings we talked about earlier, they need their respect. They need their recognition because this team is good enough to win that conference.
I mean, Syracuse has like had some really solid wins this season, and they're certainly putting themselves in the position to be successful in the postseason as well. And when you have a player like that, that's so clutch, and that's another little frustrating thing before we close. Is like, I know Caitlin Clark's getting all the attention, and she deserves it, and she's going to be the NCAA women's basketball all-time leading scorer by the end of this season, by the end of next game, by the end of next game. But you've got so many other special players that are doing incredible things, and you never hear about it. And I think there needs to be a time where, yes, you give Caitlin Clark the spotlight that she deserves, but all these other players have a spotlight that you need to give to them because they're doing incredible things as well.
It's not every day someone moves into 6th and soon to be 5th on the all-time scoring list. But that's a wrap for today, folks. Thank you for tuning in. I've been Luke Donovan alongside Riley Woodall and Zion Brown. Thanks to our producer as well, Owen Graham. More to come as we inch closer to March. Tune in next Monday for the next flop warning, catching you up with the men's highlights from over the weekend. Have a great rest of your day.